Love you, Linda. Love you.
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing "Oh Happy Day."
One word prayer. Justice, where are you?
Hey, Justice Serve TV.
I was
Whoa.
actually sorry about that. I know. It was like
What?
a giant in there.
Are you
right?
surprised? Are you surprised that we're on the air or what? What's the deal?
No, I've been on the air all day, Michael Bryant. I know you've been driving all day.
Yes, taking in all of the what a crazy day today.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody. Good to have you along for the recap of a Friday. We weren't sure what to expect today, right? We weren't sure it was going to be, a big deal or not. Obviously, one witness all day and not done yet. And I'm going to say something that is you may take issue with, but that's all right. I think today was not as positive for the defense as it should have been.
No, I'm not going to take issue with that.
And I'll tell you why. Let me give you a couple bullet points, and we're going to get into it because we have
because you were listening. I thought it went very well for the defense, but
I think it could have gone so much better. Let me give you one of the issues that I have that I think may come back to bite them. The initial testimony had to do with this testing of the glass, right? Throwing the glass, breaking the taillight with the glass. They did that, I'm assuming, because the defense said, hey, do that so that we can factor that into our analysis and our arguments. So they come up with this concept that 37 miles an hour, and believe me, Domino the dog can throw 37 miles an hour. That is nothing. It is nothing. So an inebriated...
I can't.
You could. I guarantee you can. 37 miles an hour is nothing. So what it does to me is it plants in the jury's minds the possibility that, in fact, that's what happened, that he gets out of the car and maybe they're having a tiff as he gets out, and it culminates with him taking that glass and chucking it at the vehicle, to which she responds by backing up and bumping into him. I don't know that was a story that was very well laid out before we heard the defense expert talk about that experiment. So I think that could come back to bite them. I think it creates a narrative that we really didn't have evidence of before, and now we do. Yes, of course, we're looking past the fact that any glass found on the bumper didn't match the glass. All of those things, I get that. But I'm talking about something that a juror could latch onto and say, well, what about, if he chucked the glass and then she got mad and backed up into him? I don't think that's totally out of the question for them to talk about, right or wrong.
Okay, well, while they're pondering that, could we do something else? Could we first thank Neil Rockheim for coming in and having his first solo co-host, and then his first solo host. He did a fabulous job, and he stayed for like an extra 45 minutes answering questions for everybody on Justice Serve TV. He was just remarkable. He was just wonderful, and he's going to join us one night next week. But I want to thank him because it was the first time, and I loved him. I just like, bye, I gotta go.
I know, that was great, and I was listening. I listened to the whole thing. In fact, I almost turned around and drove back so I didn't lose my job. So he did a great job.
That was a danger. And the reason I had to go was I appeared on Paul Morrow's show, which is a young show. It's about 5 weeks old now on Fox Nation, on their 3 p.m. Friday wrap up of Karen Reed, and I was joined by another guest. Well, I was joined by two guests, and let me see if I can get you the one guest. I wanted to give you her X account, okay, just because she did just follow me here, and so Tarlika Nunez Navarro, okay, and I was on with her. It's Tarlika Navarro. She's a former judge and prosecutor, leads St. Thomas University College of Law. Dedicated to transforming legal education. And she was just a pleasure to be on with. It was wonderful. And Mr. Morrow, of course, was his normal, gracious, absolutely wonderful self. And then I was on with my nemesis, Mr. DePetro. And of course,
John something. Yeah.
We have totally opposite views about everything. And at one point, and you're gonna have to find it. But by the way, this is something that you have to be a member of Fox Nation. And I don't know whether they're going to post clips. If they do, I'll repost them. We were talking about the charges against Aidan Carney, Dr. Turtleboy, and Paul had actually a very interesting take about the charges, about what the state intends to do with them if they lose this case. All right. But I said I would defend him, and I said you should be. I told him, I said you should be, you'd be happy to have the kind of source that Aiden had. You would love that kind of source that Aiden had. This is the source. And I said, if they charge him and they go further, I would defend him. I go up and defend him. And he said to me, well, you should look at yourself in the mirror if you're going to defend someone like that. And I said, well, you should look at yourself in the mirror because you're defending someone like Michael Proctor, who called the woman a C word. And so you can imagine that's how we kind of went. And then Mr. Morrow kind of intervened, and, we kind of, because he had a show to run. And but that's where we were. Okay. That's where we were.
Okay. So looked at Fox Nation, which there's going to be clips. There have to be some clips out there. If not, I think it's $7 a month or something, and they have a lot of amazing programming.
Including
not just
my husband has a
Kenney
show on
Baden
there.
show. That's
Yeah.
right. That's
My
right.
husband has a series on there, right?
What's that called again?
The Baden Files.
The Baden Files. Yeah. So
Right.
there's a ton of good stuff on there, not just the Linda Kenney Baden show, but yeah.
Anyhow,
people
so that's
check
what
that out.
so that's why I left Neil, and then I came back, and then of course I had to catch up to see the redirect of Alan Jackson because I heard some of the cross while I was watching some of it on closed caption while I was on the air, and then here we are. Here we are.
So we have a guest that can talk to us about some of these different issues, but I think Alan Jackson did an okay job on redirect, kind of poking some holes in what I think was a pretty good job by Brennan. Not that he was right, but I think he used what he had effectively, and some jurors may latch on to that. Now, I'm not discounting the dickometer. I'm not discounting the dickometer because he breaks that wide open. And even if he makes a wonderful point, people may think he's a jerk and not give it the credit that it might deserve.
Yeah,
One point that I think, and I want to talk to Stephen about this, because I think it was very interesting the way Hank Brennan did it, and I think it's totally wrong, but it sounded so good when he was talking about the difference in the weight of the arm that was used in the experiments by Dr. Wolfe and the actual weight of John O'Keefe's arm. Well, on redirect, Alan Jackson made it clear. Does anybody really know? Hey, anybody really know the weight of John O'Keefe's arm? Because Brennan made it sound like they did know, right? He made it sound like they did know. It's 11.8 pounds, but the arm used in the experiments was 9.2 or 3. So he made a big deal out of saying that's a 26% lighter arm. Therefore, and he uses that 26% to calculate a speed to suggest that, well, if the arm is 26% lighter, that means your 24-mile-an-hour speed is really 17.
Don't go. This is not Dexter. At an autopsy, you don't sever the arm off somebody and weigh it, okay? But there was I think the whole arm thing was like a 5-minute, and Olivia Lambeau has this on, where Alan Jackson objected and said, this is 5 times, Your Honor. And then the judge says, and this time, here she goes in, and this time we'll get an answer, and that'll be it. As if he didn't answer before. And then AJ said, we got an answer every single time. Good for AJ. And then Judge Cannoni says, can you answer that, Dr. Wolfe? And Dr. Wolfe says, I feel like I've answered it the best I can, Your Honor. The judge says, okay, next question. Hank Brennan then says, you don't like that question? And then AJ says, objection.
Wrong. And are you through? Are you done? Are you done?
Move to strike and strike the jurors as a solid. Olivia Lambeau has that on. That's
how'd you like the wife reference? How'd you like that?
Oh, that's ridiculous. Of course she joined. She wanted to see what they were saying about her husband, so she joined the Facebook group Free Karen Reed. And
that Brennan was using that to prove in his mind some sort of confirmation bias. I mean, that is desperate, if you ask me. Just
I agree. I think it's absolutely. Thank you, Kay Schmidt. By the way, gifted 10 Justice Served TV.
Kay Schmidt has done it again.
Thank you, Kay Schmidt. Done it again. Thank you so much, because you see how much people appreciate that when you do that. They really, really do. And by the way, hit like, subscribe, share, notify. I think we ended up today. We're close. We're almost at 15,000. We added like 1,000 subscribers or something in the past 24 hours. So let's get over 50. Let's get over 15,000.
Why not?
Why not? Hit like, subscribe, share, notify. But this subscribe. We got us up to 15,000 today of the show before the tonight. So because we have a great guest.
Yes, we do. Let's do it.
Okay. You want to
here we go.
Introduce him? Here we go. Here he is.
There he is.
I am.
Stephen. How are you, man?
He watched.
I'm doing great, thank you.
He watched. We were actually texting last night at like my 2:30 in the morning, and Stephen was texting back to me. Okay. And then we were like on the air this morning. We were like 8:50 and Stephen was up. So he didn't get any sleep. He's been watching this testimony so he can tell us what he thinks was good, what he thinks was bad. And we do have some things ready to go. We have the 24-mile-an-hour exemplar type information. I think it's a 3-minute clip to go and have you go through with us. But Stephen, hello.
How are you tonight?
Hanging in.
Good.
So give us your general impressions of Dr. Wolfe.
I think Dr. Wolfe did a great job. I was kind of surprised that he only has 20 trials under his belt, but you got to start somewhere. But he came across very well. He appeared to be handling things in a systematic, proper way, as he explained during his direct examination, going through all the 5 steps and also showing the jury how mechanics and physics apply to every aspect and step of his analysis in a systematic way. He just did a great job. I mean, Brennan did an okay job on cross, because the weight of the arm does make a little bit of a difference, but in the long run, it doesn't make a difference on the type of impact, the type of injuries, and so forth. But I think the last time we spoke, we had the dog expert on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then the other guy on Monday. He did the navigation stuff, and I think all these witnesses were great. Even Devers was great for us.
Yeah, excuse me, Stephen. She's not going to talk to you because you pronounced her name wrong. It's Dever.
Yeah.
So she
Never
can't remember her
Dever.
name. If you can't remember her name, she's not going to give you an answer. The panel I was on today, the 2 men thought she was great. They thought she was great, not for the defense. They thought she was great for the prosecution. I couldn't believe it.
No, they're blinded. They're blinded by a young woman. That's it. I mean,
she was really, just trying to be very proactive on the prosecution in avoiding the right answers and being very mischievous in lots of ways. But going into the commissioner's office, and this is the first time. How does that happen?
Yeah, I think she goes into the commissioner's office one-on-one. He puts her in a headlock, figuratively, tells her here's what she needs to say to explain the fact that her prior testimony is sinking the Commonwealth. She buys into it because she's not bright. She goes on and testifies that way, looks like an idiot, and ruins her career. But other than that, Miss Dever, good for you.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because, and I there's things you'd catch up on or you pick up on. She only went to the commissioner's office once, but she probably met with the commissioner in other offices several times.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
She was very clever. I only met with the commissioner in his office one time. But she met with them and supervisors and chiefs and whoever else is involved in the Boston agency many times. And it wasn't really asked on direct or cross specifically how it went across. But you could tell that she met with somebody many times, coached very well. Well, coached, but not very well, because she came up with some answers that were just off the wall.
Now, could you remind our viewers, by the way, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt, but your history of being in law enforcement, so they don't think that we're here being biased. Okay.
Well, I started out with the California Highway Patrol in 1979, went to the academy, learned all the aspects of being a CHP officer, police officer, enforcement officer, how to interviews and how to conduct investigations. And in my 12 years as a highway patrolman, I investigated, like I said before, 3,000 traffic accidents, either first responder, personally investigating or assisting with the investigation of those 3,000 accidents within minutes of them happening. And then walking through the scene and getting all my information and making sure all my T's are crossed and I's are dotted. Sure, did I make mistakes early on? Oh, yeah, I made mistakes. And I was caught on some trials, and just like Brennan and or Jackson, they would be the attorney that would be going against me because I was working for the prosecution. Would they catch me and make a mistake here and make a mistake there? Sure, you learn. But, you learn from your mistakes. But that was 45 years ago. I've learned from my mistakes. And since then, and watching all the episodes of this testimony today, in fact, I'll say this. Dr. Wolfe showed some testimony and some presentations on his PowerPoint that I will probably incorporate in some of my evaluations and some of my testimony, because he just did such a nice, neat job. He did not a perfect job, but well, maybe it was pretty perfect, because he really explained the elements of physics and dynamics and Newton's law and how do you establish delta V's, acceleration and forces. He made it simple, and it really came across well, I thought.
I was never so interested.
It was like a physics class. I mean, I remember physics well enough, and some of his Newton's law came back to me like triggering. Mass is neither lost nor is neither gained nor lost. An object in motion tends to remain in motion. All those axioms goes into his analysis, and I think that's great. But here's an issue I had. I think for anybody who wondered whether or not an arm attached in this case to Officer John O'Keefe could break a taillight, right? That's no longer a question. Based on the defense experiments, it can happen.
Sure.
And I saw that thing break taillights left, right, and anybody who might be looking to find that happened in this case, I think they were given plenty to work with.
I agree with that. I mean, it didn't happen at the speeds Dr. Welcher talked about, because I think he said it was 8 miles an hour, but you had to get into 15 to 20 miles an hour to get some decent breakage of the lens. But like the officer that testified, he was at the Reed house when they towed the car away.
Barrows, right?
It didn't look like that. It was, his testimony was great.
Yeah. Well,
did the taillight break? Sure. Maybe it broke somehow. Was it with a glass or an unknown object? Could have been with the arm. The jury may get a take that it was with the arm, but there's some things that just don't match up, as we discussed before. But there's certainly plenty of holes the defense poked in their case to clearly show that things just don't look right. I think the doctor who did the animal bite and scratching at Dr. Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah, Dr. Russell.
She did a great job in explanations of scratches and scrapes and puncture wounds through the sweatshirt. And that's one of the things that I can't get around. How can all those scratches and puncture marks on his arm go through the sweatshirt without leaving lots more trace evidence? And it just didn't happen. It didn't seem like it happened.
Yeah, really interesting. That was really interesting. On Michael's point, we do have a video that we wanted to show you and talk about it. This is the Commonwealth alleges that Karen Reed was going 24 miles an hour. We know that Dr. Wolfe did all the tests. What the defense to me showed that they weren't afraid of this all. So they did all the tests all the way through 29. Can we just do the test at 24 miles an hour and talk about it?
So this is a 24-mile-an-hour impact test to the ATD arm attached to a test dummy.
Next slide, please.
Remember, 24 miles an hour is where the Commonwealth came on recently.
For this test?
So it's my understanding that this is the upper end. There is a triggering event of, I believe it's 1162.2, and I think at the end of that data, the speed is approximately 24 miles per hour. So we did a test at the end point, if you will, in that data set.
What is this photograph showing in terms of the orientation of the arm and the hybrid test dummy, or ATD?
So the orientation is to depict, again, the orientation that Dr. Welcher indicated in his static and dynamic test to show what happens when again, that ATD arm that we had is attached to a test dummy and is struck at 24 miles per hour.
Next slide, please. And what is this?
So this is a thermal image of the taillights just after the install with the average temperature at about just over 33 degrees Fahrenheit.
Next slide. And what are we looking at?
So you're looking at a top-down drone video with the Lexus here on the left that will accelerate in reverse up to 24 miles an hour, striking the ATD arm.
Let's watch that, please. Next slide. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is a top-down video from atop of the forklift, or where the arm is suspended attached to the dummy. So you're going to see the vehicle enter from the bottom into going to the top of the screen.
By the way, that's what Stephen Plourd, our accident reconstructionist, said Mulcher didn't do, because if
Next
this
slide.
were the case, the body would spin. He
What
told
is
us
this
that
view?
a week ago.
It's just another perspective. This is a slow motion video where you'll see the Lexus in reverse. I think this one actually has kind of a long build-up before it starts here.
I thought this was an odd, distant angle to use.
It does seem like it's a little bit far away.
Mhm.
And could we go to the next slide, please? And what is this?
So this is a perspective from the high-speed camera, so a slow motion video with the Lexus reversing into the ATD arm at 24 miles per hour.
Before you play this, Dr. Wolfe, I failed to ask this, it may be obvious. After each of the tests, C, D, E, F, were you replacing the taillight with new exemplar taillights that had been temperature accounted for?
Yes, every test had a new set of quarter panel taillights, as well as liftgate taillights. And even in the test where the taillight in the 50-mile-an-hour test where the taillight was not damaged, we still put on new taillights. We did not repurpose or reuse any of the taillights.
Okay, thank you. If you could play this for us, please.
That's a great view right there.
That right
It does-
there?
It doesn't make sense to me that it'd be facing away like that, but I know they're trying to match the wounds to the arm, but that doesn't seem like a realistic. Why would he be standing that way?
Well, and we don't know. One of the
No.
things that are really important is if he did hit it, and it does kind of match up with the analysis with the dynamics, the body is going to spin and rotate in a counterclockwise rotation. And then as you saw, it's spinning and rotating. And if he did, since he's drunk and hit, he's probably going to fall on his face, not on the back of his head. So there's some characteristic differences on dynamics that it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But the demonstration shows what it does. And there's a lot of uphill battles and criteria for the prosecution to match everything, and it's just not meeting their burden and their proof.
Tell us why. Tell us what doesn't match, because we can see it. I see that the taillight that Barrows described is simply not the damage you're seeing here. And I thought the good point of what the defense did is that, look, we're showing you everything. We're going to give you we're showing it to you. It doesn't match. And the wounds on the arm that we all know, they're not matching. They're clearly not matching. That was my take of today.
Yeah, the doctor on Tuesday that talks about the puncture wounds and the holes in the shirt, and what Wolfe talked about today, the puncture wounds and the holes in the shirt, that doesn't match up. Shards of plastic that scraped on the arm, 9 different wounds, appears to be about 8 or 9 different wounds, various lacerations, various characteristics, various distances. The angles are a little bit different. It just doesn't match up the holes in the sweatshirt that I would see or expect as evidence on the sweatshirt based upon the damage to the taillight and or the injuries to his arm. Things just don't match up, and that's maybe one of the things that Welcher could have done to make a better presentation, because he could have done the exact same thing, but he might have been afraid. I know they bought about 10 different taillights to do these testing, Dr. Wolfe, which is the right thing to do. And I was thinking about the same thing. Did he get different taillights? Yeah, you got new taillights every day, every time. That's the right thing to do. I don't know if there are new ones or used ones from a car dealership or from a junkyard, but they're all going to be about the same. Skin characteristics, the mounting. He did the best he could without a person sitting there at 24 miles an hour that was the same size as Dr. Welcher or the victim.
I thought it was interesting that, Anka Brennan is criticizing these different experiments because you didn't use this arm. And he did so many experiments, compared to Blue Man Crew, who paints an arm and paints the... I mean, it's an embarrassment to be defending what Mr. Welcher did, Dr. Welcher did, compared to what Dr. Wolfe did, just in terms of the volume of experimentation. And so to hear Hank berate, Wolfe because of the experimentation, it just doesn't, I can't buy that when his own expert didn't do nearly as much.
Didn't do nearly as much. You're exactly right. I mean, you had to have a 24 mile an hour. If he's saying it's 24 miles an hour and it caused the injuries based upon this angle, based upon his Blue Man arm test, then he should have done something like that to show that the damage to the taillight is going to be significant and the lacerations and scrapes on the arms are going to be significant to match what was there. And Welcher didn't do that. And I'm sure the biomechanic who's coming on probably Monday after Dr. Wolfe, his associate, ARCCA's associate, he's going to put all these injuries and analysis together. And I noticed that when Dr. Wolfe testified, he didn't want to overstep the biomechanic to have cumulative testimony so the prosecution can say, this is cumulative, we won't let the biomechanic testify. So he stopped. Exactly. Did Wolfe know what he was doing? Did he understand biomechanics and injuries? Sure he did, because he works with biomechanics all the time. But that's not his area of testimony. And this time he's going to defer to the biomechanic, and he'll lay the rubber on the road on Monday, and I think walk this thing home.
Yeah. So Keiko says, were they disproving Aperture's theory with the arm position?
Well, the answer is I don't think so, because the arm is out there. There is damage to the taillight. Even though it's a little bit lighter arm, you still got some damage to the taillight. The only thing that he didn't show was what does the shirt look like or the sweatshirt look like, because they change the shirt every single time. Maybe the color is a little bit different, but they didn't match up. It didn't have the same type of characteristics that would produce the same injuries. And I think we'll see that on Monday or Tuesday with the biomechanic. But I think they did an okay. Well, the prosecution did an okay job trying to diffuse it because it's got a little bit lighter arm. So will it produce more damage to the taillight? In theory, it could, but it's not going to be that significant. I mean, you got 20% less energy because of the arm is 26% less weight.
But how do you know what John O'Keefe's arm weight? I mean, we don't cut the arm off. How do you know what an individual arm weighs? How do you do that?
You don't. But based upon the testing and studies, the arm weighs about 9% of the body weight. And this is how they come up with these numbers, or 5%, or I don't know exactly how they do it, but they have a general idea. But it's close enough. A 9.4 pound arm compared to an 11.7 arm. I mean, come on, give me a break. It's a couple pounds different. It's still going to break. Well, the thing is, bottom line is, did the taillight break at 24 miles an hour with a lighter arm? It looks like it did. But did it break like it did the other way? No. But it really puts the nail in the coffin that somebody did something to produce extra evidence at the scene, like Proctor, that really, I mean, it saddens me to think that that's what happened, but it looks like it happened. It really does.
Yeah, Alan Jackson did a good job on redirect in fixing that whole thing, not just about the weight of the arm, but he points out that that where'd that number come from, and Brennan glossed over it so quickly that then he kept repeating it as if it was the gospel. And I know there had been an objection early on about lack of foundation for that. At least I'm assuming that with the grounds, because we don't get to say in Judge Cannoni's court. But overruled. I'll allow it. So it didn't really ever get tested. Where'd that number come from, Mr. Brennan?
Also inside the I think there was a lot of focus on Wolfe that inside the taillight there's the diffusers that
the diffusers.
Diffusers that weren't broken in these tests, and they were broken in Karen Reed's. All of them were broken in Karen Reed's car when you got to the Sally Port.
To me, that was a very impressive and very, very good observation. The diffusers distribute the taillight light to different parts of the receptacle itself, and it will show certain things, and they're designed that way. And since they're broken not on the exemplar, but they're broken on the actual one, that means something went in there and caused extra damage, which is maybe be a baseball bat or
hammer, something,
a billy club or a nightstick of some sort. Something caused it, because those diffusers were damaged in the subject vehicle, but not in the exemplar testing, which is, I think, a very good point by Dr. Wolfe.
Yeah, I agree. And in full disclosure, the Justice Served TV taillight did not break diffusers either, and I used a hammer on that. So
right.
you have to really go to town on that to get through the acrylic into the diffuser, which is also a very rigid acrylic.
Really,
so,
we didn't break the diffusers? I didn't realize
diffusers
that.
are pristine on our exemplar. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
I was surprised they didn't bring the actual taillight in. Did they bring in the actual taillight into court?
Yeah, they brought not the car tail, but he brought an exemplar actual taillight.
I saw it, but did they bring the actual taillight into court?
I don't think so.
I'm thinking back. I feel like I saw it, but with one of the very early witnesses, somebody checked me on that. But I feel like I saw it, and it was quickly put away and bagged again, and that was it.
Because I know they brought a 46 pieces of plastic, red and clear, but they didn't. I didn't see the actual taillight, but I didn't look at all. I didn't see all the testimony and all the evidence. But they should have brought it in. But I think
you would think so.
I would think if in that direct examination by Jackson, Wolfe is going to pull out the actual taillight and say, "Here's the diffuser. Look at it. It's been hit and damaged in a certain way, and it just doesn't match an impact with an arm, even at 24, 29 miles an hour, and it shouldn't have been damaged, but it shows there's damage, and it shows various characteristics of somebody manipulating the evidence.
Because it's way inside the taillight. Okay.
Inside behind the 5 millimeter acrylic lens, which is about just a little bit less than a 1/4 inch thick, and it's just Wolfe did a good job, but he, Brennan tried to defuse him by the weight of the arm and the angle, and sure, the angle a little bit up and down, a little bit angle, a little bit different. You're gonna get a different result.
Disney Nerd, as one of our mods, asked, that means it wouldn't have been able to light up when being put on the flatbed, right? If the diffusers were broken, or is that different? Is the diffusers different?
No, the diffusers distribute light difference and reflect the light. It's not a part of the light source. So the tail lights, the brake lights, as it's being transported, will still be illuminated. Diffusers just distribute in a different way and reflect it in a different way.
Yeah, we'll have to look at it up close when we're back in the studio, because this really has a bunch of bumps and ridges on it, like little peaks, right? And those protect whatever's below. So I think I got the impression those little peaks were dented up or clearly damaged, even if not breaking through the diffuser entirely.
So
Right.
so Stephen, let me ask you this. When I'm watching it, then I see that the diffusers were differently because they were broken, but I don't think, talking to you, I understand the import of what that means. I'm not sure I got that from the testimony today.
Well, it didn't sound like Wolfe explained it very well. But the diffusers will distribute light and reflect at various angles, so you get maximum reflectivity of the tail light to various aspects. So it's seen at all aspects of the tail light, the top, the bottom, the left, the right, and all that area.
Here's a question close to my heart. Allegedly, maybe. How would you feel if an attorney tried to bring your wife into confirmation bias? I know that my husband, Michael Baden, as you know, has been questioned on the stand in New Jersey, like especially where everyone kind of knows me, about when he was testifying in the defense case about, well, isn't your wife a defense attorney? And that's why you're testifying for the defense. So this is a question close to my heart. How would you feel about that, Stephen?
I would not be very happy at all. I discussed some cases with my wife, and she's a defense lawyer, criminal defense lawyer, and she understands a lot of things. And but to bring Wolfe's wife into it just because I think she went on Facebook and was following it, something to that effect, I mean, that's just inappropriate and wrong. Unless he had some smoking gun that the wife is trying to influence him or tell him how to testify or do something that's not appropriate. That's wrong. And
it's also desperate, very desperate. And the other desperation move was to challenge Wolfe on how many times he testified at trial, because he had said 20, and then he clarified it by saying, well, some of them were depositions, right? I mean, come on. He testified 20 times. Some were in trial, some were in deposition. I think when you're starting to nitpick like that, you're desperate.
And you really are. And how much money you make and so forth, you're getting desperate because you're not talking about the facts of the case. You're talking about exchanging your credentials and qualifications, how many times you testify, how much money you make. Well, he didn't charge very much at all compared to Welcher and his group.
Oh no, it was so much less. And you're right. So everyone has a list. All of our experts have lists. My husband has one. You have one. About where you've testified. It's required in federal courts. So many state courts not required to. So they're just on a list. So you look at what courts you've testified in. You're actually testifying you're actually testifying in a case that's in court. Whether it's in front of a jury or a deposition, you're under oath. Penalty of perjury. So,
I've been testifying since 1979. So, I mean, I have 600-700 times testifying in trials. 600 times in deposition. In the last 10 years, I have a running list, and before that, I completely forgot. It wasn't required to list all your accomplishments and your testimony and your things together. But I testify sometimes 2 or 3 times a month, 2 or 3 times a week on occasion, but not very often. But to say, how many times you testify, and Wolfe said 20 times. He's a young guy. He has many years in front of him, and I think he's going to do quite well. Because he did he did a thorough job, and he did a good analysis and presentation to the jury with the PowerPoint and his explanation. He's teaching the jury on a 6th grade level, as we all know, to put everything together. And I think it was very simply done and very well done, so the jury understands preliminary physics, Newton's laws, theories of acceleration, forces, and delta V's. There's certain ways he could have testified a little bit smoother. He used bigger words and didn't get it all the way across, but I understood it clearly, and I think the jury will too.
I've never been so interested in physics and Newton's law before. I don't know about you, but I'm like glued. All right, Brooklyn asks, Brooklyn has one of our mugs, which is behind me. You can't see right now. Here's the thing, and when you go to court, you tell me, how is a witness supposed to get from his or her hotel to court since when he's taking a ride with someone else? This is surrounded by
more desperation.
You go, the lawyer arranges for your car or is in the car with you. I mean, all the prosecution witnesses went with the police, like Sergeant Tully for the Massachusetts State Police. So when does that ever become a thing with you about your bias because you got a ride with the defense attorney to court?
To me, no, but he's coming from out of town. The defense is paying for his accommodation, so he's going to stay in the same hotel in case they have any questions ahead of time, which they may or may not. So to ride why have separate limo drivers for every person that's coming to trial. They're all on the same side. They're all in the same car. No big deal, and all come in together. I mean, Wolfe handled it correctly. We didn't talk about the case. How's the weather? Yeah,
And I started counting bodies, and he said, well, there were 3 young women. I think they were students or interns. And then there was Mr. Is it Wolke or Wolfe, the guy who is running the tech stuff? It's one of the others. I mean, but that means there are 5 of them. Pretty decent sized car they're all crammed into. I just thought
it's in a big SUV. I think it's a big Cadillac or a Suburban. What it looks like.
Brendan's trying to make it sound like, oh, he's got this programming ride from his hotel to the courtroom. You know, one more time for defense counsel to tell him what to regurgitate. Again, it just sounds desperate.
And it does. It does. And like I said, you know, to do something like that is, I mean, it's something that he wants to bring out so he can talk about it in closing, but it's not, I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Nope. It was a 0.
Yeah.
I'm sure Welcher did the same thing. He didn't write separate rights, and he wasn't asked how it happened.
I know he probably went with Tully, because Tully seems to be the one that was bringing everybody when I was listening to them. But
Sure.
Minnie makes a good point. The taillight broke, but look at what happened to the arm. Also, the glass next to John O'Keefe and the glass on the bumper in the street don't match. Thoughts on that?
Well, the glass on the bumper, yeah, you have different glass than other glass. There's certainly several things that just don't line up. And but the test where he threw the glass into the taillight or shot the glass into the taillight, I didn't hear about that until today. But that's been, I don't know if he did that last year, but it's a pretty reasonable test to show what may have happened and why there's broken glass there. That, you know, it all sounds pretty reasonable when things happen. Certainly reasonable doubt, an ulterior theory of what happened. And bottom line, I think the prosecution, I thought they were going to have a sidebar and to dismiss the case because he did such a good job.
Wow.
Wow.
Let me ask you this question, Stephen, about the debris field, because that had been talked about with prior witnesses before we even had evidence there was a quote debris field. And my question was always, well, you mean on February 3rd, February 8th, February 10th, February 11th, which debris field are we talking about? But in those experiments, you see shards of polycarbonate breaking and scattering to some degree. Again,
Yeah.
I see that from a juror's perspective, and it tells me, well, I guess some of that could have happened.
And that's right, because the debris is going to, depending on the type of debris it is, the taillight is going to distribute pieces of evidence immediately upon impact and fly at various speeds. Then it's going to be carried on the vehicle and drop off. You know, it could be 10, 15, 20 feet away. But since nobody knows where it was actually collected or distributed, it's just awful. But
Yeah.
there is going to be some debris. Bigger pieces of plastic. Well, if it did break off, it's going to be at a certain spot. But it's going to be in the direction the vehicle was going. Most likely, it won't land near the victim.
Well, that's an interesting point. It's in the direction the vehicle's going. Is that because of forces? That's a really interesting point.
Well, the vehicle's going backwards 24 miles an hour. Let's say it hit at 24, but they really don't know exactly. They know it hit going backwards. The pieces of plastic are going to stay together when it breaks off because it hits the arm. The vehicle's still going backwards 24 miles an hour. So the plastic is still going 24 miles an hour. The body will cause it to maybe rotate with him, some of it, but the majority of it will still continue backwards away from the body. And since it's spun out of the way, maybe 7 feet off the edge of the street or in the grass, some of it may be there, but not the big parts. I think the bigger parts are going to be further down the road or further behind where the point of impact was.
I think the pieces too they talked about, and Wolfe, I think, said with one of the tests they had maybe 10 or 12 pieces. I think the jury is going to be reminded again and again there were 46 or 47 pieces ultimately gathered. So that's going to be tough to explain that distinction. That's for sure.
And since the glass wasn't all broken when it went to the Sally port, it seems like somebody's. If you're a smart jury, you're going to realize, why is that broken taillight got more broken after the Sally Port than before. That to me, that officer came across well. He has no dog in the fight, and he's going to come across.
Barrows.
That was
Yeah,
huge.
Barrows did a great job. He says, "I'm here. I don't know anybody. I'm just telling you how I saw it." I mean, it would have been decent if he would have taken a picture of it, but he's not required. He did a report. I was there. I was asked to do this. I got this. I saw the tail light was cracked, but not very much. It certainly wasn't a big deal to him how much it was broken. But when he says, looking at the Sallyport evidence where it's completely broken out, and he says, nowhere near that. So
yeah, he said not completely damaged. That was his description. Right. Hey, can I ask each of you guys a question? I want your reaction to this. Again, I'm always thinking, what's the jury going to do with all this? They saw time and time again, not just an arm hitting a light, tail light, but they see this dummy. What was one of them was called Randy? Is that right?
Rescue Randy.
Rescue Randy. And it looks enough like a human being to maybe put them, in the mindset that here's the guy who's actually been hit by this car. It looks kind of realistic at times. And any thoughts, Stephen, first to you that impacts the jury?
Well, I mean, Brendan's going to make a big deal out of it, but Rescue Randy is the same size and shape as a human. It doesn't have all the sensors and the accelerometers on it to calculate exactly how much force it is being applied to each part of the body. The hybrid dummies, like they're $100,000 or more. And Wolfe was right.
Wow.
If you hit it, I mean, in theory, could they have gotten the hybrid dummy and hit it at 24 miles an hour and be more realistic? The answer is probably, but that's an expensive project because you're going to definitely break some arms and I think you're going to get broken bones with all that type of impact. And that may show that, but that's a big, expensive proposition, especially when you do it several times. That arm is very, very expensive. The whole body is very, it's over $100,000.
Wow. I assume that Renslow is going to bring this home. So let me ask you a question, Michael. Then I'm going to ask Stephen the question we have from Missy while we're queuing up at Jackson's redirect. While we're queuing up, okay. So you've seen Rescue Randy, right, Michael? Okay, and you saw what happened. And we ended today with Jackson redirect. If you're the jury, give me the 1 point for the prosecution that you thought came out of it from the cross, and the best point for the defense going into the weekend.
I think for the prosecution, they showed this jury it could happen. I think going into these experiments done by the defense, there was a huge question: could an arm at the speed they're suggesting break that taillight? I had questions about it because I've broken one. It took a hammer to do it. They saw again and again and again it could happen. Okay, right. I think what the defense was able to do though is sort of disconnect that impact, if it did happen, from any injury caused. And we know Rensler's going to bring that on the Monday, Tuesday, whenever he testifies. That's his expertise. But it was still left empty for the jury. So that helps the defense if they can't connect any impact to those injuries.
And Stephen, what do you think?
I agree with you. But, could a 25 or 24 mile an hour impact, 29 mile an hour impact with a smaller arm cause a breakage of the tail? Sure, it could. But now the biomechanic Rexler is going to come out on Monday, Tuesday, and he says it may break an arm or it may break the tail light, but it will also, there's enough force because of that to break the arm and leave different types of injuries on the body and more physical evidence on the body and the sweatshirt, and it's just not there.
And we're not afraid to show you that. So Missy Mayhem, one of our producers here, question: have you ever seen a situation like the Shannon with one N Burgess education like before, Stephen, in a courtroom?
I have not seen it. I mean, people will sometimes over embellish their credentials and qualifications, and sometimes they'll be cut on it. I have not. And it looks really bad for Burgess because on all the websites and stuff like that, it appears that he's embellishing his qualifications by saying things, even though he didn't testify to it. The literature, the websites clearly was brought out on cross-examination, and to me, he looked really bad.
Yeah. I mean, embellishing to me is, yeah, I finished 7th in my class and it was really 20th. That's embellishing. But to say I got a degree when I didn't, that sounds like more like a lie to me.
And I've been working on it for 12 years.
Yeah, 17 years. 17
17?
years. It's he's a slow study, but yeah, 17 years.
If you're going to be an engineer, you want to get it done. If you're working on a master's and a thesis, it takes longer. So taking 4, 5, 6 years is one thing, but 17 years for a bachelor's degree in engineering.
And he was last enrolled in 2018.
Right.
So for 7 of those 17 years, he hasn't even been going to school.
So how can he be continuing to try to accomplish that degree?
So he's thinking about it a lot, giving it a lot of thought, but not going to class.
Right. I mean, he's done all kinds of testing and continuing education. And he knows what he's doing. He just didn't go far enough also. And when the expert came in on Monday and put 12 different scenarios together, and 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 of them were wrong or could have happened in different ways, that really looks bad. It looks bad.
So nothing that's over committee. All right. Do we have Alan Jackson's redirect queued up so we can watch a little bit of that? Here we go.
Okay.
Okay, if you could scroll through, keep going, if you'd please, to the next slide, the next. Is this a video or is this a still photograph?
It is a video.
Is this at full speed or is this slow?
This is full speed.
Okay, can you go to the next slide? Okay, go back one. This is a test at what speed?
This is the Lexus moving in reverse, contacting at 24 miles an hour.
All right, let's go ahead and play this at full speed if we could. Dr. Wolfe, that's awfully fast. Can you get to a point where you're moving frame by frame just at the point of contact?
They had some tech issues here where he couldn't actually do that.
Am I able to display my screen without doing the... Trying to see how I can get this to work.
I like working frame by frame.
If you could just move forward frame by frame rather than...
I don't know that I can in the...
So you're like, what Jackson wants to work frame by frame, and that's the way you say you work.
Oh, I missed it.
Okay.
I like doing that because
we thought.
you can
Let me ask you a couple of questions based on that. Did you review that video in slow motion as well as at full speed?
Yes, from a frame by frame perspective.
And in terms of a couple of different questions about that particular test, when there's impact with that right arm, what's the speed that the arm gets to upon impact?
In test E?
Right. If the car's going 24 miles an hour, what's the expected speed of the arm?
So the hand got up to a little over 24. The arm got a little over 21 miles per hour.
The debris that comes off of the taillight, the fragments, what speed would they be going at the point of impact when they crack and are released from the taillight?
At the impact speed or less.
In order to penetrate the sweatshirt and cut the arm across, would the shards have to be going faster or slower than the arm?
They would have to be going faster. If they're moving at a common velocity with the arm relative to it, they would somehow have to accelerate with more speed to catch up and go beyond the arm, essentially.
Is that physically possible?
No.
Yeah, that's what I think too. It's not possible.
I also want to ask you about do you have in your PowerPoint the photographs of the sweatshirt at the what you call the full-on impact, test F as in Foxtrot?
I don't have any of those in the PowerPoint.
Okay. The photo that you were showing, if I could ask Ms. Gilman to show the same photograph that she showed earlier of the subsequent to test F as in Foxtrot with the holes in the sleeve.
If you can.
Yes, she may.
Can you do that, Mr.
Bottom
Lynn?
mechanic should bring those in on Monday.
Very kind.
Okay.
It looked like it all
Dr.
tests.
Wolfe, you're showing just the left arm underneath the, whatever you call the dummy, Randy, right?
Yes.
Did Mr. Brennan show you the rest of the sweatshirt?
No.
What did the rest of the sweatshirt look like after this full-on impact when he was launched on the asphalt?
Mangled. So there was not only significant road rash to the clothing all over the torso section, the left arm, the right arm. There was holes in many different locations of various sizes. There was also just on the skin of the dummy, there was road rash on the face had been scraped. The torso had been scraped. So there was significant body damage to the torso as well.
Taking just the sweatshirt, separating that out. What about the bodice of the sweatshirt, the front of the sweatshirt? Were there holes and frays and damage to the front?
It was covered in all of those, yes.
What about the back of the sweatshirt? Did that also have damage?
I don't believe the back, because I think he fell onto his stomach.
What about the other arm?
Yes, both arms did.
Were the holes and frays larger than the holes, the puncture holes that you saw on John O'Keefe's sweatshirt?
Certainly larger and again spread out amongst the entirety of the sweatshirt, at least on the front side.
Was the damage to the sweatshirt that you saw in this experiment consistent with the damage or defects that you saw in just the right arm, those 9 puncture holes on the right arm of the sweatshirt of John O'Keefe?
No, this is distinctly road rash. There's a clear distinction between the two.
Looking at this particular set of defects in the arm, is that misleading in terms of its comparison to John O'Keefe's sweatshirt?
Sustained.
I can't wait to get out sustained.
I know. Doesn't even let him finish saying objection.
Yeah, she's pretty quick on her objection rulings.
Yeah.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask to approach very briefly on an issue to discuss earlier.
We're pushing past that. Yeah, she's very quick. I mean, it was like objection.
It's
sustained.
predetermined. It's
Yeah.
predetermined.
Prosecution gets all their objections ruled in
You were
their
asked
favor.
on
All
cross-examination
ruled
about some of the
in
work that
favor
ARCCA
of
does on
prosecution.
behalf of private lawyers, even insurance companies, correct?
Correct.
This was
You were not
important.
hired by an insurance company. That's not who
Yep.
hired you. On
Can we just stop it right there a second, Missy? Just stop it for a moment. This was important because, Stephen, because the first jurors thought that ARCCA, being a was hired by Karen Reed's insurance company. And Hank Brennan actually opened the door because one of the earliest questions he asked Dr. Wolfe on his cross-examination was when you talked about the Department of Defense, and that was before you got there, and the National Hockey League, you didn't mention that you also do work for insurance companies, carriers, do you? And he said, no, we do work for insurance carriers. So that opened the door for this question to be asked, or else I don't think that door would have been open. Michael?
Yeah. No, I agree. And I was actually surprised that it still wasn't objected to and sustained. But yeah, it was important. This jury may not know how important it was, but it was important.
It may come out on Monday.
Yeah, and it did come out today. I mean, he answered. He said, no, we were not hired by. We were hired by an agency, is what
Yeah.
he said. We were hired by an agency. It makes it
Still
sound like we're
hiding
the
all of
matrix.
that, right? Still hiding all of that, which is ridiculous. Yeah, FBI, an investigation, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. It's not your concern. Move on.
Yeah. Have you ever seen that, Stephen? Before we go back, have you ever seen that? You hide who hired you? You know, the judge makes you hide who hired you.
In criminal cases, you can testify to insurance companies and so forth. And in civil cases, you can't mention insurance because it may lead the jury to say you have some bias and you don't care how much the value is because they have plenty of money. But in this case, I guess the question would be appropriate. Were you hired by an insurance company in this case? And the answer would be no, if he gets it out.
He got it out. He got it out there.
Then I think the jury knows that, well, who is this agency? It had to be the FBI because that was brought up in Devereaux or whatever her name was.
Never
now.
say never. Yeah, she said it. How many times, Linda, you counted?
13.
13. Yeah, lucky 13 for her.
And Brennan's bringing up trial, and people are saying different trials. So,
Yep. Brennan has been caught doing that after, there was such a, press to say other proceeding, prior proceeding, and he's just jumped right into trial himself.
I testified in a second trial, and if I said trial other than previous hearing, how I did say it, I would get in trouble if I said a trial, because that means there's something wrong in this case because it didn't get a conviction, so they're retrying it. But in this case, I think the jury's got to know it. And I'm really, there's so much press in Boston. I'm wondering really how many people in the jury are not getting some type of a glimpse here or there, very curious about it, even though they say they haven't looked at certain things. It's hard to say I mean, you can't turn around without somebody in Boston, because I have a friend who lives in Boston, and she says, I'm sick of this trial because it's on all the news and it's covered day and night. Everybody's talking about the Karen Reed trial, and I'm just sick of it. And whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, I mean, it's a sad, sad case because we have a dead police officer, but we have a girl who looks like she didn't do it on the scope of things, but because she said certain things about, did I hit him? Maybe I hit him and it was an accident. Who knows? I mean, that's obviously out there because she said it in her videos and her documentaries. So,
I think there's probably a real distinction, Stephen, between those that might live in Boston, which is really another world from Canton, Dedham, Stoughton, and those who live there. I know the Michel who's at Dedham Pizza. Every time I go in there and have a slice and use their restroom, I'm usually hooked up, and she's always asking, "What's happening? What's going on?" I don't get a chance to watch because I'm here working, slinging the pizza, and she goes home at night and tries to catch up because I think it hits home for her. I mean, this is her community, and that's what we've seen from so many of the supporters for Karen Reed, but a little more detached up in Boston.
Well, we have about 4 minutes left to go of Alan's redirect. Want to try to rush through it?
Sure,
Yeah.
good.
The initial fire, correct?
Correct. It was not an insurance company.
Thank you.
There you go.
There you go. Got it out.
A couple of more questions, if it's okay with the court, Your Honor, before we break.
Okay.
Thank you. You were asked several questions about the glass and whether or not the glass weighed in on your analysis of the damage to the rear tail light, correct?
Correct.
Did you consider that the glass on the rear bumper did not match the cocktail glass that was found close to John O'Keefe's body? Or were you aware of that?
I don't think initially I was aware that there was a difference between the glass cup that was found and the glass on the bumper.
You were asked a lot of questions about the difference in the weight of the arm. And I'm going by memory, 11.8 pounds statistically as it relates to Mr. O'Keefe versus 9.4 pounds. Have I got that right?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. Are you aware that anybody has ever measured the weight of just John O'Keefe's right arm?
I'm not aware of that, no.
When you were asked questions about whether or not his arm weighed 11.8 pounds, are you aware of anybody ever weighing just his arm?
No.
What is that based on? 11.8, where'd that come from?
I don't know.
Because you're going to mention the word statistic. Based on the statistics, his arm would weigh that much. Height, weight, etc.
Correct.
Does the statistic determine the actual weight of an arm?
No, not conclusive of what Mr. O'Keefe's arm weighed, no.
As you sit here, do you know whether his arm, John O'Keefe's right arm, if weighted by itself accurately, because pounds and apparently half pounds matter, if it weighed 11.8 pounds or if it weighed 9.4 pounds? Do you know?
I don't know, no.
Do you believe that your testing, the totality of your testing, was dependent upon those 2.5 pounds based on the weight of the hybrid 3, or if it's the arm hybrid 3, and the statistic of 11.8 pounds?
Sustained.
So
In
Brennan
what way
can say the weight,
does that
and he
differentiation,
can't say what
2.5 pounds or approximately 2.5 pounds,
Typical.
in what way does that make a difference in terms of your testing?
It doesn't, and that's part of the reason why we increase the speeds to almost 30 miles an hour to look at, again, when you're bringing that much more kinetic energy from the vehicle, that's going to overcome any mass that arm has. If it, like I said, if it's a pound difference, 2 pound difference, the momentum of that vehicle moving at 30 miles an hour versus 24 miles an hour, again, kinetic energy is equal to 1/2 times the mass times the velocity squared. So even if you go up a few miles per hour, you're exponentially increasing that amount of kinetic energy from the vehicle.
Correct.
You were also asked a series of questions about reducing the speed of the testing by a certain percentage. Remember those questions?
Yes.
Did that make any sense to you mathematically? Yeah.
Sustained in that form.
What effect, if you can tell us, well, let me ask it this way. Is the speed of the testing vehicle tethered in some way to the difference of that 2.5 pounds that Mr. Brennan was asking you about?
No, and again, as you saw throughout the PowerPoint, when that vehicle is coming in at 24 miles an hour, 29 miles an hour, at those speeds, that arm, when it makes contact, is going to get accelerated up to that velocity. It's just going to reach that common velocity. It's not going to, you're not going to somehow affect the vehicle speed due to that, the fact that the arm weighing 10 pounds roughly, and you've got 6,000 pounds. It's not going to somehow scrub off speed of the vehicle.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this point, I would be going through a couple of photographs and videos. It might be a good place to
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, she just steps all over him. He can't even say, hey, I'm going to move to something else. This would be a great time to break. She just, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It really is. It really is. And so there's your confirmation bias right there.
Yeah.
Oh, good point. That's a confirmation bias. Look, too bad that lawyers can't say that without being disbarred.
I think the jury's going to see that.
I don't know how they can't. I really don't.
Right.
I really don't.
So what he's telling us right now, I can't imagine how you could hit that at 24, 25 and not have broken bones, not have bruises, not have all sorts of stuff that is clearly not on the arm. I mean, that's what I come down to.
And that's where Rensselaer will fill that in next week.
I think your biomechanics can talk about all that.
Yep.
If it did hit it, 24, 29 miles an hour, it's going to break an arm. It's going to break the two bones in the radial and the ulna, as the doctor talked about. Those are pretty small bones, and it hit right there on it, and then it broke the humerus, which is in between the elbow and the shoulder. That's a bigger bone. You probably won't break that, but you're going to break one of the bones in the forearm. There's two small bones in there that control the whole arm, and if it broke that tail light at 24, 29 miles an hour, 24 miles an hour, then I think clearly that arm is going to be broken. In my opinion, I think it's going to be broken.
We shall see on Monday. I'll tell you, it's going to be an
Monday.
interesting wrap up. And I know now they're talking about, you heard the judge say that to the jury, they had previously been told Thursday is going to be a half a day, but she asked them today, think about it over the weekend, if anybody has a problem with going all day Thursday. So we're steaming toward, closing arguments. I don't know if they're going to be next Friday, but they certainly would be probably the following Monday or Tuesday at the latest.
Yeah,
right.
Looks like, right.
And they're not bringing in Proctor. Obviously, they're not bringing in Proctor. They don't need him.
Well, yeah, I think Proctor's day is done in many ways.
Yeah, so we'll have to see. So we're going to be calling on you again, looks like sometime next week. And then they're going to bring, the prosecution's threatening to bring Judd Welcher back in. I think that Hank should reassess that. The jury's going to be done.
I do too.
They're done.
And if I'm the defense, though, I'm saying bring him on. Let's have one more reminder. One more reminder of this guy.
Exactly. Let me go over what you didn't do.
Yeah.
And try to beat up my guy who did everything that's possible. Oh, yeah, that 2-pound arm difference is a big deal. But he went from 24 to 29 miles an hour. That's clearly going to make up the difference with the energy factor. So I think it's not a big deal. But I can't see him not bringing in Welcher to rebut what he's saying, because they wouldn't let Welcher talk about, did you look at the other defendants? Did you look at the defense experts' reports? He wasn't able to talk about that. He did. He had to look at all. If I'm testifying on the stand and I have an opinion, I want to know where the other guy is coming at and why. And he's got reports and PowerPoints. He's going to have all that available to him. But to say I didn't look at that, or I didn't consider, or I can't talk about it now, they have to bring Welcher back in. They have to.
Well, that'd be interesting if they do, because I think that jury's going to be done. It's going to be held against the prosecution. They're done. They're going to hear these two guys, and they're going to be. Come on, we want to get to it. We want to get to it. Especially that. Remember, they got to hear the medical examiner yet, the forensic pathologist. And I will remind everybody here that with all of their money, spending $435,000, I think it was, on Welch's firm, and all the money that the state has, and all the budget they have for this case, in the whole United States of America, they couldn't find a board-certified forensic pathologist to say this was a homicide. Okay.
Unbelievable.
I think you're going to hear that from them too. But so, Stephen, can we call upon you next week, or are we good? Are we overdoing our welcome? I mean, your brother's going to be like, okay, I said my brother was a reconstructionist, but you didn't have to latch on to him for the whole month.
I don't mind. I like doing this. I'm going to tell you how I see it. I'm going to call it as I see it. I have no dog in the fight. I like Welcher and what he was doing. Then I looked at what he didn't do, and like I said, he didn't do enough. And surely it clearly showed that he didn't do enough.
Yeah.
But he can't undo what's been done. That he can't say he did something different now. And if he criticized Wolfe too much, he's gonna look really bad because he didn't do the testing. I thought of doing some testing myself to get my dummy out there and back it up or slam it into a tail light. But I think Wolfe did a great job, even though there's a little bit of analysis here and there could change things. Overall, the biomechanic is going to bring it home. I think the biomechanic is going to bring it home. The injuries or lack of injuries to the arm at 24, 29 miles an hour is going to show it couldn't have happened this way.
Yeah, couldn't have happened the way it. And the defense will be saying, where we weren't scared to bring you everything. We brought you everything, good, bad, or indifferent. They didn't bring you anything. They hid. Anyhow,
Yep.
all of you watching, by the way, I saw that our 16-year-old viewer asked if my Fox interview was today. Yes, it was. It's today's interview on Fox Nation. I don't know if there'll be clips, and I don't know if other people will have it. Some people have it and tape it and then show it to other people. I know Michael last time said, "Lynn, do you expect me to pay money for that?" And I said, "No, it's okay."
I already have a subscription. I'm not sure what the legalities are of me clipping. I guess that's a fair use if I want to
It's
record
fair
it.
use, right? Fair use of different things and to use it on our show is a fair use, I guess. But I don't know how YouTube feels about that. Anyhow, please, because Stephen is so gracious with this time, please hit like and subscribe. You have a social media page, Stephen?
I do not. The more stuff you put up, the more they can throw it back in your face. And so I don't do it.
We've seen that. Yep.
I watch things. I look at things. My wife posts all the time about certain things that she's doing, and I see some of my friends and relatives do it. But I just don't want to be that public where I can be criticized for one thing or another.
Right. You follow somebody, and all of a sudden that means you love them, right? Instead of just following to see what they're posting. But for all those watching right now, please hit like and subscribe, share, notify, because Stephen is just so gracious, and he tells you like he sees it, like we do. Michael, Bryant, and I have felt that, and we've said it, that we don't think the prosecution's met their burden of proof. If there's a possibility, I said today, if there's a possibility for a hung, it would be on the second count, because you may have some people who just say, well, just throw up their hands and go Occam's razor. But I think this case is way overcharged for murder. I mean, murder. Come on.
No doubt.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope everybody has a great weekend.
Stephen, have a
Stephen,
terrific weekend.
Thanks
Thank you
again,
very much.
Stephen. And we'll get back to you Monday, Tuesday. I figure whenever Rensler's done and we see whether Welcher comes back, that'd be a good time to bring you back into the mix.
Sure. Be glad to.
Very good.
Thank you, Stephen. I promise I won't text you at 2 a.m.
That's okay. You call me, text me anytime. I may not answer, but you can text me.
All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. Thank you for watching. And